In the late 19th century, a great scramble was underway. European powers, armed with industrial might and imperial ambition, were carving up Africa like a cake. From the Cape to Cairo, flags were being planted, territories claimed, and ancient kingdoms were falling one by one. By the 1890s, almost the entire continent was under European control. But nestled in the Horn of Africa, surrounded on all sides by British, French, and Italian colonies, was one holdout: the ancient Empire of Abyssinia, known today as Ethiopia. To the world, its fate seemed sealed. It was a matter of when, not if, it would be consumed by the colonial machine. But Europe had underestimated the land of the Lion of Judah. They had underestimated its people, and most of all, they had underestimated its emperor. This is the story of the Battle of Adwa. The story of how an African nation stared down a European empire and won, securing its sovereignty and becoming a beacon of hope for a continent. The man at the center of this storm was Emperor Menelik II. He ascended to the throne in 1889, inheriting a nation that was ancient, but also isolated and technologically outmatched. He knew the world was changing fast, and that the scramble for Africa was not a distant political game. It was an existential threat knocking at his door. To the north, the Italians were in Eritrea. To the east, the French were in Djibouti. To the south and west, the British held sway over Kenya, Sudan, and Somaliland. Abyssinia was trapped, but Menelik was no simple monarch. He was a brilliant strategist and a master of diplomacy. He saw the rivalries between the European powers not just as a threat, but as an opportunity. He began to play them against each other, a dangerous game of chess on the geopolitical board. He would court the French to counter the British, and then use British interests to keep the Italians in check. His goal was simple: buy time and modernize his nation, especially his army. This strategy led him to sign the Treaty of Uchali with Italy in 1889. The Italians saw this as their golden ticket. They believed the treaty made Abyssinia a protectorate, basically a colony in all but name. A crucial article in the Italian version of the treaty stated that Ethiopia must conduct all its foreign affairs through Italy. But Menelik, who was fluent in multiple languages, had been very careful. The Amharic version, the one he signed and considered binding, sighed Ethiopia could use Italy's services if it chose to. It was a choice, not a command. When the Italians tried to enforce their interpretation, Menelik was ready. He publicly denounced the treaty, declaring, "The Emperor of Ethiopia has been tricked." But his defiance wasn't just words. While the Italians were celebrating their supposed diplomatic coup, Menelik had been secretly and shrewdly arming his empire, using the very same European rivalries he was exploiting. Menelik started buying weapons. He bought modern rifles and artillery from the French and the Russians, who were more than happy to undermine Italy's colonial ambitions. He used his connections and his nation's resources to quietly build one of the largest and best-equipped armies in Africa. His agents fanned out across Europe, not as supplicants, but as customers for the latest military hardware. Crate after crate of modern Remington rifles, cannons, and millions of rounds of ammunition made their way into the Ethiopian highlands, often disguised as harmless commercial goods. By the time the crisis with Italy came to a head, Menelik wasn't leading an army with spears and shields. He was commanding a force of over 100,000 soldiers, many of them armed with the same, if not better, repeating rifles than the Italian invaders. He had turned the tables without firing a single shot. In late 1895, Italy decided to teach Menelik a lesson. They believed their own propaganda, that the Abyssinians were a disorganized, poorly armed force that would crumble at the first sign of a modern European army. General Oreste Baratieri, the commander of the Italian forces, pushed into the northern province of Tigray, expecting a quick and glorious victory to secure Italy's place among the great colonial powers. But Menelik II was not just a diplomat. He was a unifying leader. He issued a historic proclamation, a call to arms that resonated across the diverse peoples of his empire. "Enemies have now come upon us to ruin our country and to change our religion," he declared. "Today, you who are strong, give me your strength, and you who are weak, help me by prayer." The response was overwhelming. From every corner of the empire, from Shua, Gojama, Hara, and Tigray, warriors, nobles, and common farmers rallied to the imperial banner under the leadership of Menelik and the brilliant Empress Taytu Betul, a formidable military strategist in her own right. A massive, united Ethiopian force began to march north. This wasn't just an army. It was a nation on the move. The two armies converged near the town of Adwa. The Italians, overconfident and plagued by poor maps and faulty intelligence, were in a difficult position. Their supply lines were stretched thin, and their troops were exhausted. Under pressure from Rome to deliver a decisive victory, General Baratieri made a fatal decision. On the night of February 29, 1896, he ordered his forces to advance in a surprise attack on the Ethiopian camp. But the surprise was on them. As the Italian columns marched through the treacherous, mountainous terrain in the dark, they became separated and lost. As dawn broke on March 1, 1896, the Ethiopians, who knew the land intimately, were ready. They weren't a disorganized horde. They were a disciplined army deployed in a strategic position. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The Ethiopian forces, under the direct command of Menelik, Empress Taytu, and their top generals like Ras Makanan, unleashed a devastating assault. The Italian columns were isolated and attacked one by one. The Ethiopian artillery, positioned on the high ground, rained fire down on the invaders. The infantry, fired with patriotic zeal, charged forward, overwhelming the stunned Italian soldiers. By midday, it was all over. The Italian army was not just defeated, it was annihilated. Thousands of Italian soldiers were killed or wounded, and thousands more were taken prisoner. Their modern weapons and dreams of empire lay shattered in the valleys of Adwa. It was the single most disastrous defeat a European colonial power had suffered in Africa. The news sent shockwaves across the world. In Italy, the government fell, and riots broke out in the streets. The idea of European invincibility was shattered. For Ethiopia, the victory at Adwa was everything. It guaranteed its sovereignty, forcing Italy and other European powers to recognize it as an equal, independent nation. It was a monumental achievement, making Ethiopia the only African country to successfully resist European colonization during the Scramble for Africa. The Battle of Adwa became an immortal symbol, not just for Ethiopia, but for all of Africa and for colonized people everywhere. It was a powerful testament to what a united people could achieve against overwhelming odds. It fueled the fires of Pan-Africanism and inspired future generations of freedom fighters across the continent. Today, the spirit of Adwa remains a cornerstone of Ethiopian identity. It's a source of immense national pride, a reminder of a legacy of independence, resilience, and unity. The victory wasn't just about military tactics or modern rifles. It was about the collective will of a people to defend their freedom, their faith, and their way of life. It's a story that proves that history isn't always written by the most powerful, but sometimes by the most determined. The legacy of Menelik and the heroes of 1896 lives on, a timeless lesson in courage and strategy that continues to inspire the world. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as incredible as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. We'll see you in the next video.